now it is recording.
Are you transmitting?
Yeah, but it's mainly for the recording.
Is anybody on it?
No, just us right now. I have to let them for security purposes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are you doing this webinar?
Yeah, I mean it's recorded, but you could get in, but I have to let them. That's why last time I have to drop my presentation to let them.
So right now you're sharing.
Yeah, and if they come in, I'll let them, but that way they'll be.
Oh, cool. All right, morning. All right, so as you learned in the last session, we have a lot of stuff to go through, and it's really, really cold in here. So the sooner we get through, the sooner we can go outside for more. We don't say that very often in Austin. So welcome back to the in-person events. Yay for in-person. And Andy and I always do our traditional selfie.
Yeah. Whether we want to or not.
It's a smile. So we've got that taken care of. Yeah, so if you don't know me, I'm Bradley Wilson. I do current events.
And I am Andrew Bates. I do social studies.
Which takes twice as long and it's half as fun. So I got the first job in.
It's all right. I wanted to see how it was going to go, because we hadn't been in the same room before, and I felt like I kind of got you heavy on the digital one we did over the summer. So, all right, but now I'm ready. Well, at least your dog won't be barking through this entire one.
He's barking at home. He's got his bad boy collar on now, so he barks like that. All right, so let's see. We're recording, so don't say anything that you don't want recorded for the entire world. And apparently we're recording a blank screen right now. Sorry about that. So how many people have been through this session before? All right, don't spoil the jokes. They haven't changed, pandemic notwithstanding. All right. But
I've got fresh material. I don't know about you.
We'll see. We'll see. We started this session actually, 5 years ago now, right?
At least.
Yeah, so it's been a while. Partly because of the belief that Andy and I both have in the value of the essay. Part one. Part two, quite frankly, we saw not the quality of essays that we wanted to see. Right? So which is why we're spending 90 minutes or so talking about an essay.
And part of it is also that we understand the perspective, and I touched on this a little bit in my first session, about some people look at the essay and just have negative feelings for it because it's subjective. And so we wanted to dispel some of the negativity that was attached to it, focused on the more positive aspects of it and why we think it's essential, not just important, not just good to have, but absolutely has to be a part of both of our contests. And because of that, we wanted to do this session, not just to show how to do the essay and ways you can improve, which is certainly a big part of it, but also to get past that, because there just seemed to have been some, and it was small, but still it was significant enough of an attitudinal barrier of people with the essay and the subjectivity of it. And also we wanted to try and eliminate some of that by standardizing how the essay is approached from a judging perspective, which is why we do this training in the summer with coaches and sponsors.
And are doing more and more of that, actually. And I agree with Andy. There was this thing, why have an essay? Well, the only reason you have an essay is because there would be too many ties without it, right? And so a lot of people viewed it as, this is just, it's a hurdle that we have to get through. It's not really that important. And that's just not the way that we think, right? So we acknowledge, right, it is a determining factor in our contest, and it always will be. There has to be some sort of way to break a tie, and this is the way that we do it, right? And nobody's come up with a better solution, and I'm fine with that, because as a college professor, I know how poorly students come into college being able to write. So it also pushes you guys, and I talked about this in my last session, in all of our multiple guest stuff, that's a lot of breadth, right? We're covering a lot of material there. So you're getting a lot of breadth, whether it's about one book or about the entire world and the existence of it during the course of a year.
I'm waiting for you to mention the current events contest.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, that was good. Right. So the essay gives you a chance to get into some depth into something, right? It allows you the opportunity to prove what you have learned. So we'll come back and talk a lot about that. And like Andy alluded to just earlier, it does strike that balance in between subjective and objective. And we're going to acknowledge from the get-go that grading an essay at some level is subjective, and there's no way to make it completely objective.
But also, there is a randomness to the objective portion. You know, what we think is important, and not just on the meta of what issue or what item, but then what we focus on to ask about. That's random. And so the objective portion is not really perfect by any means, just because we know A is A for sure, and that's the answer, which again, even that can be debated and has been. It doesn't mean it's perfect. The essay has some subjectivity to it, but the fact that it forces you to really understand a topic, to really understand what we're trying to get you to focus on for this year, that's why we have it, and that's why we need it.
All right, and then I, as a college professor, really focus on that last one because I look at skills that you need beyond UIL, beyond high school, beyond college, and I still see people saying, you gotta be able to write, right? Over and over and over again. And they're still saying that writing, specifically in communication in general, are skills that students are coming out of college lacking. So if I can help you in high school improve those skills, and you can put things on your LinkedIn profile and your resume, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, I'm a better writer because of this. Hey, that's going to help you because employers are still saying this is from a while back, but the data is the same. The data is the same. And you can find these articles right and left and right and left. Right? So our point is don't just blow off the essay. Recruiters and companies are saying, send us your writing, your sample. If you don't meet our standards for communication, we are not hiring you. College students often don't realize the importance on-the-job writing is. And quite frankly, most colleges now are requiring writing samples to get into college. Right? And they're using that as a subjective way to go, we're going to take you, but we're not going to take you. Right? So right? We'll take you, but not you. Right? So it just is, right? It's a part of life. And I defy my students all the time to say, here's a job that doesn't have any writing. I'm going to shut the door while you do.
Yeah. And again, look at that. Why are they doing that? Why would they choose that? There's a lot of data out there. If you want to assess different students or different applications that are coming your way, possible candidates for a position, there's tons of things they could give you that are objective data, right? Coming out of high school, you've got grades, you've got SAT scores, or other test scores, things like that. But they choose not to look at that, or they choose to add to that something completely subjective. Why? Because it tells you so much. It really gives you a better reflection of that individual and their abilities that those numbers may not. Grades can be inflated, tests can be cheated on, or your parents are really rich and they pay for someone else to do it, things like that. But
speaking of current events,
of course, so they try to find other ways. And again, when it comes to a job, they want to talk to you. They want to see how you write because you're going to have to do that on the job. You have to communicate. And writing is communication. That's what we try to really sell about the essay is that it's communication. It's a speech in a lot of ways. And so you have to be able to communicate what you know if you really want to excel.
So this is my favorite slide actually in the whole presentation because it puts it all kind of in a nutshell. So if you go to sleep after this one, well, you got the important stuff, right? Because we talk about the process of writing an essay, and we're going to spend a good probably 30 minutes just talking about this piece of it because I just don't feel like it's something, I know my college students don't have it when they get to college because they come to college and they go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to write an introductory paragraph followed by 3 body paragraphs with Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, or A, B, and C, and then a concluding paragraph that wraps it all up, right? I'm like, yeah, that's one form of writing, but there's a lot of other forms of writing too. So they get exposed to other forms of writing really for the first time, I think, in a lot of their lives. So we're going to give you the process of writing that actually ends up being pretty universal. Whether it's an essay for UIL or whether it's a story for my reporting class or an essay for my history class, or whatever the case may be. Right? You start by reading whatever the prompt is that the teacher gave you. Please read the prompt. Don't think you read the prompt. Please read the prompt. And we're going to talk more about this here in a second. Right? Because the next thing that's going to happen, this is my favorite part, is you're going to forget.
Now, that's an important part of the process. That's why we put it there. It is unavoidable, and so might as well be aware of it, right? So we want to go through this as much as possible. The more you know about it, the better you're prepared for it, then the less that freak out is. You know, there's a reason before they sent the first people in space in the US space program, they put them into a booth. They made it look exactly like it would on the interior of the shuttle that they're going up on, or in that case, this tiny little tin can. But they pumped in sound of what it would sound like. They shook it so that it would feel like the engines were about to take off, so that the heart rate when they actually were about to take off was actually lower than it would have been because they've been through it hundreds of times. So that's what we're trying to do here.
It was actually all the same,
let
right?
you know. Yeah.
I mean, it didn't actually take off.
Well, yeah.
Sitting
But
anyway.
when you actually do it, you feel like you've done it before, even though it's the first time, right? So if you go through this process enough, even though it may not be at state, maybe the first time ever at state, you've gone through it enough to where it feels like you've done it a million times, even though it's the first time you're shooting into space.
I mean, somebody wants it.
That does mean
How cool.
it's Richard.
Watching us on TV. All right. So when we say read the prompt, by the way, and you'll see, we'll come back to this over and over again. I give you the test at regional, district, whatever. Look at the cover of the test, and when they say go, skip to the prompt for the essay. Right? Skip to the prompt. Read the prompt first. Especially in social studies. I think more so in social studies than in current events. But you're going to then take the test, and you're going to see things during the test that are going to remind you of things that, oh yeah, I need to put that in my essay.
Because when you read that prompt, one of two things generally happens. Either A, you freak out because you don't know anything about that essay. And that's a bad feeling. But it's going to happen anyway. So you go ahead and get it out of the way. Mute this real quick. You go ahead and get that out of the way, right? You don't want
Andy, you muted us. I was trying to mute me. I can't hear you.
Along the way, right? You're thinking, in fact, I've gotten to the point now where I would even add another thing here. Read the essay prompt, jot a few notes down right then and there, right? What comes off your mind right at the beginning, then take the test, right? And then add to that list of things, because as we're going to see now, right? You take the test, read the essay prompt again. Now jot some more notes down.
Make sure you read that prompt as much as possible. I do this. I still do this. I was doing just a couple weeks ago. I was supposed to be writing some test questions for something, and they gave me some information to start with. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this question, and I might write this, bring in this idea, and then I let time pass. I go back to it. And I'm like, okay, let me actually put pen to paper. I'm going to write this down. What I'm going to write a question over. And I read the prompt again. I was like, okay, well, that question doesn't work because it's not what they actually asked me. It happens to everybody. That's why we really focus on reading that prompt again, especially our prompts, because they're multi-tiered. They have various aspects to them that you may not get, you probably won't get with just one perusal.
And Andy's exactly right. I was asked in May of last academic year to write an essay that was due on November 1st this fall. right? And so the minute they asked me, I printed out that piece of paper and I jotted a few notes down, and they got stuck in a folder. And I didn't look at it again for months and months and months. And then I came back to it, went back and I looked at those notes. I'm like, well, what does that have to do with the question that they asked me?
I did the exact same thing. I was like, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use a graph that does this. And then I looked at my notes. I was like, well, that doesn't even apply. So.
And sometimes, and then you write an outline, and you go, wait a minute, that outline doesn't even deal with the prompt that they asked me. Right? So it is. Please read the prompt. In fact, look how many times we put this up here, right? Because we want you to answer the question that we asked, not the question that you wanted us to ask. Right? Which has happened to everybody in this room, including me. Right? Write an outline. Read the prompt. Does your outline fit the question that we asked? Write a draft. It's still not too late to change. Right? It's okay. Right? You can reorder paragraphs or whatever still at this point. Right? Even after you've gotten the draft, read the prompt again. Right? You can go back and do editing and rewriting, tailor it to the prompt.
And this is not put here just as a point of emphasis. We don't repeat it just so it's like, hey, we're serious. We really mean it's important. We're just putting, no, at each step of the process, you may glean something new by rereading it. Something that, oh, I would have left that out. And I can add just another sentence or maybe even a whole new paragraph about what I needed to talk about because I didn't remember it in the first 2-3 times I read that essay.
Now that circuit completes, and you go, oh yeah, I need to put that in.
It's that important so that we do put it in there that many times, but also it's literally meant to be at each point in that process.
It may be, and I saw this when I was judging state this last year, it may be a few words. Did you go back and read that prompt and there's a few key words in there that when you put them in your essay, now the judge goes, oh yeah, they got that because they used the exact wording or synonyms for those words. And so you've impressed the judge. You just went back and added them at the last second.
That's very true. I can tell you because of the apocalypse this past year.
It's happened.
when I read the state essays, I judged every single essay at state this past year. So if you were at state, I read the essay you put in, and I was the one who graded it. And some of them were really good. A lot of them were really good. So you're having to split hairs, and it's just those couple words. And sometimes I noticed it, where it was just a little caret and added above, or it's an arrow, or just a line was struck out and then they wrote it. And it's that little bit of information, or it's that connection or that analysis that they added that made the difference between first and second, or between placing and not placing, because they went back and reread.
And we have more to say about that later, but we, on purpose, a little social experiment at state this year. He judged all of his essays himself. I had a group of people judging mine, and then we wanted to kind of compare results. So you're starting to see some hints towards what we learned from that process, right? Years ago, when we decided we wanted to do the session, we asked some people from state, some students at state, hey, give us some tips. If you were passing along knowledge to your future selves, what would be some tips? And here's one of the tips that they gave. Neatness counts. If a judge can't read your essay, they will naturally have a hard time rewarding you. Now, I don't know about you, but judging state this year, especially when we had to scan them and send them off to somebody else, right? So you're seeing a scan that was taken with my phone, sent off to somebody else, and then they'd write on it and send it back again, right? Boy, let me tell you, we couldn't read it. It just did. It just got put into the maybe stack or the no stack, right? It just matters, right?
Again, it's all about communication, right? And if you've taken just your basic public speaking class or personal communication class, they talk about noise. And noise doesn't have to be the concrete version of it that you're used to dealing with, like why we close the door, that kind of noise. Noise is any interference between the audience and your message, right? And your message is the essay. The judges are your audience. The noise can be anything from it's disorganized to it's just hard to read. And you want to eliminate as much of that as possible. I know for some of you that's hard, but you got to try. I used to coach, right? And before I moved away from that, I had some really great competitors that just, I don't know where they learned to write. Well, never mind. They didn't learn to write, apparently, or it was from a chicken. But it was very difficult. And even the objective portion, they're straining. But that can be the difference when you're talking about going from district to region and region to state. a judge not being able to tell, is that B a B or a D or a Cheeto? You know, they need to know what that is. And on the essay, every single letter is like that. And if you're making them do that kind of interpretation, you know, and that cuneiform analysis on every single letter of an essay, that's too much noise. And your essay could be great. Your essay could be the best by far, but you're not going to get those points because you're making them work too hard. Let's face it, people are lazy. Okay. So you want to try to limit that work, limit that noise.
I mean, I'm going to push this one a little bit because our social experiment this year, I got all the essays back. And then sometimes, you know, it happens. There would be a tie, right, in the essays. And even though we break the tie with the essays, they didn't know that, right? Those people out there in Never Never Land didn't know that. So they came back to me and then I would have to compare the essays. And so I kind of did the ethereal, pull myself out of this and let me make sure I'm watching myself as I'm doing this. And I found myself more than once going, this one's typed and I can read it like and be done with it. And this one's handwritten. Oh, I gotta start with that one. Oh my God, this is gonna take me forever. And I've got all, you know, hundreds of essays to look at. It just does.
And I'm not as old and as tired, so like I put in more effort, but even with my experience into it, it was because I had those students who had just some problems, and you know, my father like wrote as if he was mad at paper and people who were trying to read. But so I was used to it. I put in a lot of work. Whenever I'm there, I want to really get what you said. But even with that, even trying to do it and having that perspective, I really kind of feel for this person. I know where they're coming from. It's hard. And you just miss stuff. You do. And then again, even if the judge is trying to do that, subconsciously they're working harder and they're going to have negative associations with that essay, even if they're trying to fight against it. That's just how people work, right? Whereas if they see something neat and clean, they run through it, they have a positive feeling. They don't know why, but they have a positive feeling, and that's points.
I don't think we've ever spent this much time on that slide, but I got new insights into this
Right.
spring when I was having to look at all of them. All right, Andy was more worried about the alligators coming into his house.
That's every day.
All right, so just a couple things about neatness. Even I did, by the way, push UIL and say, can't we get these essays to be typed? Right? Can't we do the same thing that journalism does and allow people? And they just didn't go for it. But it wasn't for lack of trying, by the way. And we are one step closer to having at least my contest. I'm not sure about yours, being online and piloting an online version of it, which I think will be, thank God, for a whole bunch of reasons. But this is tips that all of you should follow, right? Even if you're handwriting the test, right? Neatness, double space, right? Please double space. Oh my God, it makes it so much easier, especially if you're one of those people that has big furry little letters that writes like this, but down, and yeah, right? Keep your editing simple. You don't have to do this to cross off a letter. Just do that, right? Just cross it off, right? And please proofread grammar, spelling, punctuation, style, right? Just be consistent. Right? I'm not asking you to follow Associated Press style or something, but if you're going to spell the word wrong, spell it wrong all the way through. Right? At least mean it. Yeah. I really don't know how to spell that word. Right? And then don't do that. Right?
Yeah, and again, this actually helps with your own energy. We talk about people being lazy. You know, energy's finite. You have a limited resource, so don't expend it on things you don't need to.
Right.
If you can help yourself read what you've written, it's going to be easier. So keeping those spaces. Again, like you said, it's not your ex-girlfriend's name. You don't have to completely blot it from existence, right? Like just a line through. It's a lot easier. As far as the online thing, like hopefully that will happen. That'd be great. That would actually allow me to do what Current Events does, which is one of the few things he does right. It's where he puts a picture on the front of his test that has to do with the essay, which is great. I don't do that because I'm lazy. And I don't come up with the essay questions until like right before, and I'm always tweaking them, but it lets you see it right ahead. So you, again, that whole freak out process, I still have to write it. I'm not history, I know, but anyway, that process of seeing it and freaking out, you can do that as soon as you get it because he's got a picture. You don't know the exact wording, but it's right there. And if it was online, it would be a lot easier for me to do that as well, to give you that right at the beginning. So that would help.
And then the number thing, which, you know, it's pandemic, we got past that. But remember, we're back into in-person mode, right? So don't put your name on any page. It tells you that in the rules. Put your number on it, etc. Right?
Number on every page. I try to preach that as loud as I can. Every page, whether it's your test, the actual booklet of the test or your written paper for the essay or your answer key, all of them should have your numbers on them because things happen. Papers get lost. They get shuffled.
Especially this year when we were taking pictures of stuff and stuff will get shuffled. And the ones that had numbers on every page, oh my God, thank you.
Because even in person, it's happened. We've graded every single paper and then we're putting them into the computer and suddenly like, we don't have a number.
Yeah, or one's left over.
Yeah, it's like, why do we not have a number? So please do that.
When you open up your test, just write, like you said, write your number on every page on the test and write your number on every page of anything that your hands go on, right? All right, so here's some tips for you. A good essay answers the questions stated or implied in the prompt. And we're going to talk about these in some detail. Begins with a well-formed thesis, opens with a clear, precise statement that assimilates the information. Gives stuff in a logical order, right? Flows smoothly, and contains few grammar, spelling, punctuation errors. So there you go, right? That's a good essay, right? And we'll deal with some of these issues, right? Here's the tip. The essay may analyze and interpret, but should not attempt to editorialize. This, by the way, was the first, I don't know about your test, I'd be curious actually. With my test, this was the first round of elimination, right? When we were going through the test, we could get from yes, we kind of did 3 stacks, yes, no, and maybe, right? And you automatically got put in the no stack if your paper was full of, I think that, and they should do this or whatever, right? If you editorialized excessively, right, you're down here.
And this is what I always say about editorializing. It's there regardless,
Agreed.
right? You're going to do it even if you try not to. So try not to. Like I talked about in my section when I was talking about the different books that I was looking at over the Olympics, some of them, or one in particular, was just overly editorialized. You're going to show your opinion by what you write about, how much you write on it, and what facts you include. Because there's a lot of facts you could include that you won't. So those choices reflect your opinion. And that's enough. And we want that.
And the order that you put them in.
Exactly. The priority you place on them, all that. And that's good. That's fine. That's what we're looking for. But that's the only aspects of your opinion that should be there, right? The I shouldn't ever really appear in these essays. But certainly when you go too far, not just, it doesn't have to say, I think, when you editorialize and like, this is dumb, or, this is ridiculous, or everybody agrees they're wrong about this.
Chuckle, but you'd be shocked at how
it happens.
It states. Right? I don't read unless I happen to be judging a region, I don't read the regional, but I read all the state ones. Right? So analyze and interpret, don't editorialize. Work on, this is coming from your high school English teachers, I hope. Work on transitional or directional words. The essay should have a clear, organized, logical order. This is back to create an outline. If your essay's all over the place, I want to see the outline. In fact, I love it when I'm judging an essay and I can see in the margins or something like that, just a little outline of things. Because even before I start reading it, I see that outline and I go, yeah, right? A logical order and information should flow from one idea to the next. However, therefore, except that, number 2, whatever, give me those transitional words.
And don't get me wrong, if you want to throw in information, you're going to get points for the information you have. But again, it's all about that noise. It's that how effectively are you communicating with your audience? And when it's logical and the person reading it understands, okay, this, and they're not having to, wait, why are they talking about this? Like, where does this go?
Squirrel.
You're losing those points, even though it's accurate, even though it's good. And it may be great analysis, or it may just be factual, relevant information. You're losing some of the value of it because the audience is having a hard time interpreting it.
Especially when you go from squirrel to rabbit and then back to squirrel. We're like, what? Make sure to have a thesis and answer the question. No matter how much you wish it was another question, answer the question that we asked. Examine the question in a variety of contexts, and we're going to harp on this one a lot. Social, political, scientific, cultural, and economic. Do you have an acronym?
Yeah, so the easy way I always thought this was PEGs, right? And this is not just for essays, but it's just anything that you're dealing with. You want to look at the different parts of it, right? And PEGs worked for a little bit because it's something you could build on, but it wasn't great. So I moved it to specs because that made a lot more sense,
it's
right?
The name of a liquor store. I know you guys.
Not how I intended it, but still true. So specs, right? When you're looking at the specs of something, it's the plans, right? It's how you should construct something. And it's very relevant for essays. But again, anything that you're trying to analyze, You want to look at the specs of it, any issue. And the specs or the design of it deal with the social, the political, the economic, and the cultural impacts, right? So that SPEC, and then S can be science, which sometimes is part of it and sometimes isn't. But still, if you just remember the specs, the design, I want to look at how is this thing made? How is it built? What are the different parts? I want to look at the social, political, economic, and cultural aspects of it, the specs.
All right, we won't dwell on this because we both covered our contests. We don't need to dwell on the
Very
format.
basic. 40, mine's twice as good. So there's 80. His worth 50 points. Mine twice as good. Perfect 100. You know, we all get this.
The numbers are different, but the format is the same. Okay. So yeah.
Have you read this? Have you looked at it? It's good.
No, long story. I was busy writing a book this summer instead of reading. Oh, my reading list. Oh my god.
This is what we call humble brag right there. Oh, I was busy. I couldn't read because I was writing my own book.
All right.
Have a
So
book?
I challenge you all to do it. Don't try to do it over one summer. Yeah. So okay, we go through all that. All right. So I'm not going to dwell on this piece of it because it doesn't matter all that much. But I am going to dwell on this piece for just a second. This is a reminder for all of you. Who plays first? Not hard to decide, right? Right? Objective plus essay, therapy. Who plays second? Why?
Essays higher.
Essays higher, right? We'll see.
So, and just really quickly, did you notice the highest objective score? It's Brittany. She actually placed what? Fourth. Okay, highest objective score, and notably higher, percentage-wise, significantly higher than Juan, right? But fourth place. Why was it? It's the essay, and these are real scores. These are things that happen on a regular basis.
These aren't real, but we're going to see the real ones here in a second. Right. So I like doing statistics, so I just break this stuff down. We talk about the other stuff in my class, but I did want you, as you guys are going through stuff, practice scoring each other's essays. Right? We'll see that in a second and see how you're comparing. Right? See how you're comparing with these things, because if you don't practice writing the essay, you're not going to get better at it. The way you get better at writing is by writing and being edited.
I forgot to
Write and then get feedback. Write and then.
I actually have these for state as well. I'll put them on Twitter because I forgot to bring mine. But since I had every single test in my possession, I was like, might as well. I did. I forgot. That's why it's not trying to be cool in jeans. I just forgot my pants. But I still feel like I look all right. But yeah, I have these same things. I'll put them on Twitter because it's interesting. It kind of shows you, especially with the essay, how it relates to the objective. And let's be honest, a lot of times the highest objective is one of the highest essays, because why'd you get the highest objective? You really know these topics. So you're probably pretty good at the essay, but just because the knowledge is there doesn't mean the communication is there. So it doesn't always correlate directly, but I'll share those as well, because it was really interesting to look at those numbers.
Things that I watch for, like why did somebody make it to state and get a 1 on an essay? Right. And I look back at that. Was it my question? Did I ask the question in such a way? Was that particular essay just bad? Was it a person that made it on a team, right, and then just didn't know how to do essays? That happens. Right? So we look at these things. All right. So this is state 2021. So these are real numbers, not made up numbers. Right? Although I didn't give you the names. Right. So I have a hypothesis that says that the higher the classification, the higher the scores are going to be, because of survival of the fittest. Right. There's just more people competing at these levels, so it takes a while. But this year, the highest score was in 5A. All right, so let's look at class 6A. This is 2019 numbers. 4 people tied for first place based on an objective score of 31. Alpha she got a 7 on the essay and remained in first place, like Andy said, right? However, the next 3 didn't do as well on the essay, scoring 6, 5, and 4 respectively. Right? So these are real numbers here, and you can see place before, first, 5, 6, 6, 6, 8, place after. Right? So 1 stayed the same, but this other person that was a first place person tied for first place moved down to 4th. This one moved down to 5th. This person who was tied for first place didn't place at all. That sucks. Right? That sucks to be tied for first place, because like Andy said, you have this knowledge, but now we got a problem this way. These are real numbers. These are real people. So somebody's score went down 7 points Because
And
of
so
the
you
essay.
got to think that that person had the knowledge. Maybe not. You know, it could have been just that topic. They just didn't happen to know. But chances are, if they're getting the highest score in 6A at state on current events, they know what they're talking about. So that's not the issue. So what could it have been? Think of all those different things. Did they editorialize? Was it not very well organized? Right? All these different things that we've talked about, all that noise, obviously it was there because 4.5, it's not a great score, especially when you're talking about they know all this stuff. So all those different things add up. And now you go from first place in 6A to not placing.
And then look at Zeta down here, placed sixth, came in second. Almost didn't even get their essay graded. Right? Moved up because of the essay.
And that's
real people.
And that's awesome to see. I love seeing that when it ends up, because you know the difference between a 29 and a 31 could have been a couple guesses, right? But the essay, you can't guess, right? I mentioned that this morning. You can't just blindly write stuff down and like, I got a 20. You know, never happens. But you can blindly write some stuff down on the objective, and you might get a few. It may be the difference between a 29 and a 31. The essay, you can't do that. And so it's reflected in that 29 moving up to second place.
Just think about what Andy just said, right? You could literally go through probably his test and my test too, and put B's all the way down and get 10 on my test, right? So 10 of these points are gimmies, unless you're just bad at guessing, right? So yeah, you can't guess on the essay.
By the way, don't do that. It's not. I don't encourage that. I don't endorse
Which,
that
by
in
the
any
way,
way,
my
shape, or
students,
form.
if they have to guess in between one or the other, they usually guess wrong. Statistically speaking, if my students guess wrong, more than they guess right. So again, I mean, here's the changes, right? The red ones went down. And you can see for all classifications. And so, like in first place, 2 people went up on their scores in 5A and 2A, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So positive numbers are moving up, red numbers are moving down. And you can see, look, in fourth place right here in class 2A went down 3 points. No numbers, nobody changed. So those are the people whose multiple choice in essay didn't matter, right? And you can see that's not very many blanks, right? So the essay didn't influence the outcome, like Andy said, in some of those blanks up there, right? But it did in all of the rest. So if you were in 5A,
And look at 2A, like it affected every single place. You know, every single place in 2A was impacted one way or another. You know, that's, the numbers don't lie.
so if we haven't made our case yet, here we are, right? So this is more relevant, maybe to him than to me, but he's got a box around his material, right? My box is the world and what happens over the course of 12 months, right, from August 20th on, right? So when people say, how do you choose the topic? You know, really the topics choose themselves, to be honest, right? There's those things that in the news, we talked about this in my class, they go blip, and then they're not in the news anymore. That's not the essay, right? The essays are the things that are like this, and they keep coming back, and they keep coming back, and they keep coming back from one form or another. So,
But to connect that over to mine, there's a similar theme there. It keeps coming back. And I mentioned that this morning. If you see it in section 1, and it's also mentioned in the book, and then it's in one of the articles or part of some of the information in section 3, it keeps coming up, it's probably going to be in an essay.
so
It's
watch
the
for those
same
things.
thing. Yeah.
Watch for those things. I would not spend a lot of time trying to predict what our essay topics are going to be, right? Just write some essays. It'll come naturally.
Although I do say this because it's the most help I can give you. The slide, and I'll post that again, that is in my presentation about ideas. That is the God's honest truth of what I believe the essays will come from. So that's a good source. It may not, but that's my honest thinking on what I believe essays are going to be directed towards. So look at that.
All right, just a reminder that if you don't write an essay, you'll be disqualified. That happened at state this year.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah. Really? Why would you make it all the way to state and then not write an essay? Just write. Some people talk about.
So about that, just real quick, you know, obviously, if you don't know, now you know. So no excuse. But plan your time out, right, of what you need to do. And that essay has got to be part of it, because not only is it a big part of, am I going to place, am I not, but all your work on the objective is for naught if you don't have that essay.
And you screw your team too.
Yeah.
So, okay, so write an essay. Now, we told you, right? We've already told you what we look for when we look for that essay, but we give the graders a rubric to follow, right? And I will guarantee you with 100% certainty of state that the graders, my people that graded the essays this year, followed the rubric because we practiced it, right? I can guarantee you with 100% certainty that the one single grader that graded all the essays in social studies this year followed the rubric.
Who I hear was great,
Right.
by the way. But yeah, it's there for a reason.
Do we get like a point where just we anything on the paper? Like,
We're going to talk about that. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, right? Hold that thought. Because here's the best qualifications for an essay. It tells you on the rubric what it is. Let's see if I go back to the bottom. So a 0 through 5 essay displays little or no understanding of the prompt. The response is poorly written and organized and may contain significant fact, grammar, spelling, punctuation errors that distract from the clarity of the response. Right, so you got to do something.
Right. And it says a sincere effort, right? So bare minimum, and we tell this to judges and everything else. Look, if they restate the prompt and they say this was obviously very important, that's a sincere effort. That's good. Doesn't mean you get a point. You might get a 0, but you won't just get disqualified, right? And that's really, obviously you weren't looking for a lot of points because you don't know anything to write about, but you won't just get disqualified. Because again, that was heartbreaking when it happened at state, and there's different reasons for why that happened. That's not, sometimes you can't avoid it. Things happen. So that case was different. But for you, if you can avoid it, this is what we're saying. At least write a sincere effort, put what you can, restate the prompt if you have to, and that's it. You don't want to give, a dissertation on, who the best pop diva of the last 30 years is, even though you may have some great points. That's not a sincere effort. Why waffles are your favorite? Not a sincere effort. But just put that down. You might get a 0, you might get 1, but at least you won't get disqualified.
Did that answer your question? All right. So we told you what a good essay is. We told you a good process here, right? And now we're going to give you some insight into the judging process, right? Because Andy and I have been on a crusade now for 5+ years to change the culture of judging essays in our contest, right? Because I feel pretty vehemently that the way the judging used to happen is 3 judges would sit there and they would go, and one judge would read the essays out loud to the other ones, and they would go, okay, well, this one wins. And the person with the loudest mouth is really the one that determined who won, right? That's not the intent of the way this is supposed to be judged. Right? So we have been on a crusade now for a while, and it's very well documented in videos, and we teach this during the summer to the instructors. And I have been known to call other judges out on the carpet when I watch them judging the wrong way now, because I've just gotten, look, no, there is a right way to do this, and it makes a difference. Right? It does. Okay. So here's the question for you guys, and I want you instructors holding other instructors accountable for this. You absolutely have my permission to watch how they're judging, right? To ask them how they judge, and ask them. In a 3-person judging panel, must every person grade the essay? Yes. No, 2 people should not be looking at it and then giving it to the 3rd person and say, okay, here's the one that won. Right? And you have our permission to, hey, I went to this thing in Austin, and Bates and Wilson, the comedy team, said, hey, you really need not to do it that way. And if they look at you and frown, then go to the meet director and say, look, here's what's going on over here, and this just can't happen. Right? And don't get into a pissing match, but right. But
you can, give us a email, a call, whatever, especially if you're talking district or region, like give us a call.
Yes.
And we'll tell you, right then and there, put them on the phone. Hey, by the way, you're wrong. I can do that. It doesn't take long.
Especially if you're sitting on the judging panel, right? It's just in district, a lot of us end up judging other stuff, right? If you're sitting on the panel and somebody tries to do it another way, say, that's not the way UIL wants it done. And David will back us up.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. And again, we've been pushing this a long time. I'd much rather say like, oh, this is great, this is right, and accentuate the positive. But I'm fine pointing out, how people mess up as well. I mean, I work with this guy, so we've got some background in that.
He's a principal. That's what he does.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what I do every day. On this, it says, should they grade each one? Yes. That means also read each one. Okay. You can't grade it if you didn't read it. So make sure you have read and then graded each one separately. We want every voice to be heard, and that can't happen unless it's heard independently, right? Because if you hear someone else, even if you hear them read it, the way they read,
Or don't.
exactly, how they intone, what they skip over, unfortunately, different things like that, the face they make when they read it, all of that goes into the judge's interpretation of that essay. So that shouldn't happen. Cut it out. Each person reads the essay, gives it to the other person. There's 8 or more. There's time where you can read one and grade it. They can read one and grade it. You don't have to wait and do them all at the same time. That doesn't have to happen. But each one needs to grade it separately so that you get a clean result, something that is not tampered with. Okay, you don't want the Russians involving themselves in this process, right? You want to make sure it's a clean result.
Which means students, when you get your feedback back, you should see 3 somethings, right? It may just be 3 different handwritings with 3 different numbers up there at the top. It may be 3 different handwritings for the comments. It may be 3 different handwritings and colors of ink on the actual essay. It doesn't matter. But somehow you should see evidence of 3 different people having touched your
Granted,
essay.
be aware it can be one person because it has to be an odd number, right? It has to be an odd number. So it's generally 3. That's what we want to push for because that makes the most sense. We understand in districts sometimes that's not, conceivable.
And region.
Yeah, and unfortunately at regions that happens as well. So it may be 1. That's okay. That's within the rules. But again, we want 3 if it can be 3. And when it is, it needs to be 3 individual assessments.
Right? So students, you have the right, absolutely, you were blessed by us to hold them accountable for that piece of it.
Also make sure they don't just average their scores. Make sure that it's a consensus that's in the rules specifically.
All right, so,
Although the consensus may be an average, sorry.
yeah, well, we'll come back to that here in a second. All right, so here's a prompt. Right, for those of you that haven't seen an essay prompt before, right, here's a prompt. I don't think we do anything with this.
I don't think so.
I don't think.
No, it's just an example.
All right, and these are out there for you to see. Lots of prompts on the website, so you can get tons and tons of prompts. And again, like I told my last class, I encourage you at least once a month to go through the full process, right? Have somebody write a prompt or have one of your teammates write a prompt and write the whole
Is
thing.
this your train wreck prompt?
This one?
Yeah, the one that nobody liked.
I don't remember now. I don't remember.
Well, the problem was it's a great essay, especially for that year. It said pick 2 or 3.
Oh, yeah.
And people just lost their minds. It's like, what do you mean 2 or 3? I need to know. It can't be 2 or 3. It needs to be 2 or it needs to be 3.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Thanks. Yeah, no, I will never do that again. It will forever on. It will say state 3 or something. There will be no wishy-washy part of it, right? So we're just going to show you an essay from this one, right? Here was the prompt. You kind of read it. Social media, blah 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 blah. Right? Pick 2 or 3. Right? Just look at. We're not going to dwell on this, and we don't need to. But look at the beginning of it. The academic year of 2017-2018 has witnessed an impressive amount of movements based around society. Each movement involves different groups of people with a uniting factor, which allows them to introduce not only change, but also on an international scale. 3 of the most important social movements are the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and the movement centered around gun violence led by survivors of the Marjorie Roman Strayman. What do you think?
They picked 2.
Not bad, right? I mean, grammar, spelling, punctuation stuff notwithstanding, right? Not bad. And then they go on February 17, 2018, oversaw a horrendous amount of students at Parkland, blah, 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 after witnessing the, right? So it's pretty well logically organized. It's got some good detail in it, right? It flows pretty well, right? That was not a bad essay. Just another prompt here.
I mean, give them time to. I mean, this
It's
is
a prompt.
This is one of my prompts, so it's like
know.
it's
And
enjoyable.
it does
to
not
read.
have the wishy-washy. It says discuss, right? So discuss.
But as with all of our prompts, because they really do follow a similar pattern, a lot of times it'll tell you to do 2 or 3 things. Make sure you do all of those things. Discuss the use, effectiveness, and limitations of passive resistance. So make sure when you write that, you are doing all of it. All right, here's some examples of how it was used. Here's where it worked. Here's where it didn't. Okay? If you only have 2 of those 3, there's going to be a problem.
And look, he gave you the outline for the essay, right?
Yeah.
He gave it to you. Discuss use, then discuss effectiveness, and then discuss the limitations. Put a beginning on it, put an end on it, you got it covered. Let's see here. Do we need to know? Let's skip that.
Yeah, that's just the structure of the social studies one, but it's the same way every time, and it's in the other presentation.
Right. So we'll play a little game here, right? I'm going to give you a piece of an essay. Right? We're just going to play a little game, right? And you're going to assign it a score. You're going to pretend like you're the judge. Right? Don't let anybody else see your score. You can write it on your hand. You can write it on the back of the neck of the person in front of you. I don't care, right? But don't show anybody your score. Don't show anybody your score. And we're not going to do the group part. Just play with me. All right. Okay.
Now, something that's key here, not showing your score. That's actually what we want judges to do as well. It's not like write a big 7 or a 10 or a 15 once you've done it. Keep that to yourself, okay? And then when everyone has their number, that's when you share those numbers and come to a consensus. Because otherwise, again, it's not clean. You're influencing someone. As soon as, and I've graded a million essays, just like he has, as soon as you see a number down there, your brain's set for expectations of what you're going to get out of that essay. So if someone's already written a 7, I have certain expectations of what I'm going to get in that essay. I shouldn't have those. So that's why we do this whole keep to yourself thing.
This is the process we want people going through at invitationals, although we have no control over that, district, regional, and it is the process that we follow at state. And so again, instructors, if you're judging, this is what we want you to do.
And that's a key thing on the invitationals. Like, don't get bent out of shape if they're not doing it there, because sometimes they can't. But if they are trying, or if you're running one, this is what they should be emulating as much as possible. But again, if it's an invitational, sometimes they just have to get it done. But this is what they should try to shoot for.
All right, so we've seen the rubric. We know what we're looking for.
Go back to the rubric one second. All right, one key thing I wanted to hit was this, because we mentioned it a little bit. Lacks a thesis. If you don't have a thesis, this is your ceiling. And it's the same way with social studies, just double the points, basically. So if you don't have a clear thesis, this is basically as high as you can get. Now, some of your judges are going to be like, well, they didn't have a thesis, but the rest was really good, so they might bump you up. But some of these people are going to look at the rubric and they're going to follow that rubric and be faithful to it. And it says it lacks a thesis. So even though the rest of it was beautiful, it was immaculate, it should be turned into a monument, I'm only going up to 4 because it didn't have a thesis.
So here's the prompt. The year 1992 might have been the first to get the label as Year of the Woman after the election of a number of female senators and hotly contested Senate confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas, Benito Hill raised concern about the dominance of men in the Senate. However, when historians look back, they'll unquestionably view the academic year 2019 as the Year of the Woman as well. Using substantial relevant information in varying national and international perspectives, political, social, cultural, you recognize that from the prompt, with at least 3 specific examples, analyze the idea that 2018-2019 was another Year of the Woman.
Now, we're going to look at this, but again, just in general, to harp on why it's so important to reread this prompt, this is complex. It's asking a lot of you. And so you need to make sure you go over it, because if you miss that, oh, I need to cover all of this, or I need to have 3 specific examples, or that it has to be national and international. If you miss any of those, compared to someone who reread it enough to where they got them all, you're just not going to compete, right? So that's a lot to take in the first time. But if you reread that again and again, then you can start to see it, and you'll start to think of different ways that you can actually incorporate it.
In my notes off to the side, I would have written the words national, international, and some stuff below it. I would have written each of those things down and stuff below it, right? And then see where the commonalities. And I would have written 3 specific examples. Right. So here's an essay, and again, we're going to ask you to grade it. So it starts off. I'm certainly in favor of calling this the Year of the Woman, and it's about time. I mean, just look at what happened in Congress this year. 117 women were elected, 102 women were elected to the House, 15 women were elected or appointed to the Senate, 36 women are new members. And that's just at the national level. At the local level, 1/4 of state legislatures was female. Around the world, worldwide, led some 26 countries as elected heads of state, including Germany, Bangladesh, and Lithuania. Angela Merkel, for example, has been described as the de facto leader of the European Union, the most powerful woman in the world. And as the leader of the free world, Merkel announced in December that she would not seek re-election as her party's leader, nor would she continue as chancellor after 2021. She was the country's first female chancellor. Of course, it was also a woman, Theresa May, who led the efforts of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. Not all women are success stories. Women also celebrated big successes in sports and science. Sarah Thomas was the first female official to work in NFL postseason history. It was only last summer when 2 black women became the first time 2 women to officiate an NBA game altogether. The NBA got its first female referee in 1997, and last fall the NBA promoted 5 referees to full-time status, including the 4th and 5th women in league history to achieve full-time status. NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Krista Koch were set to make history on March 29th as the first all-female crew to perform a spacewalk on the International Space Station. NASA said the spacewalk was delayed, quote, due in part to spacesuit availability. Greta Thunberg, 16, my age, hasn't graduated high school, but she's already a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize. The Swedish activist is being considered for the honor and recognition of her work in the fight against climate change. I wish I were smart enough to be nominated for a Nobel Prize. It was in 1920 when the 19th Amendment was finally ratified, guaranteeing all American women the right to vote. But it was 100 years later when we celebrated the Year of the Woman. Give it a grade. Write it down.
Don't discuss.
Don't discuss it. Just write it down. Just write it down. Come on, write it down. Write it down.
Independent.
You got it.
Independent. On your own.
Well, we want the reason we're having you write it down is so you don't change your answer.
Yeah. Because you'll be influenced, and that's what we don't want. We want individual thought, right? What's that? Yeah. Can you put the rubric back up? There you go. I was like, what are you doing? Was that the one you wrote?
All right, so 8 through 10, stand up. How many people gave it an 8 through a 10? Stand up. Nobody? Nobody gave it an 8 through a 10? Not an 8, 9, or 10? Oh, stand up. It's okay. See,
It's okay.
see, look,
Yeah.
you just proved our point. You didn't want to stand up because of peer pressure.
Because nobody else thought it, even though you were right. No, I don't.
Right? You proved our point. Right? Already.
All right.
5 through 7. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I got 23. Sure. Oops. 2 to 4. $41.
I lost count.
40.
So 41. We're gonna go with it.
0 to 1.
Who are the meetings? All right. There's always a couple. People are just not happy about that essay.
Look at that.
Just aggressive.
Almost
Aggressive on that. All right. So if you average these numbers up, which is hard to do because then I have to take an average within an average because we can do the actual number. But I think we can feel that it's going to fall at about a 3.5, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. What would you, he wrote this essay. This was not a real essay. So that's why there are like purposeful mistakes in it.
Okay. So just really, I just really quickly, beginning got us in trouble, right? So already I'm jaded, right? And it says in the prompt, don't just make a list of things, right? Nice list, yay, you know the stuff, but it says in the prompt, don't make a list of things, so I'm in trouble, right? But then down here, organizationally, it wasn't bad, right? Did national and international, gave very specific examples, threw in some opinion, right? That's a problem, right? But we got sports and science, we got all those areas, and we got national, international, right? So here, not bad, but I got jaded up here, right? I don't remember what I gave it. I think it was a 5.
Yeah, I'm actually a little higher here. I think I'm normally like a 4.5 on this, somewhere like that, because that's a lot of good information. And look, at the end of the day, that's what I'm looking for. Because as much as we put into the writing, because that's the problem that a lot of people have, and that's what they're missing. They've got the information, but not the writing. Remember that this is not an English essay. It's not turned in for a grade. This is not an AP essay. This is meant to be how much information do you know? How much analysis can you put in there and put it all together for us? We're talking about the writing because that makes your information more effective. But at the end of the day, and that's why it literally says that at the beginning of the prompt, and it also says that for the judges, that they're supposed to focus on the information. And so this has a lot of really specific, really good information. And for me, I'm going to look past some of that other stuff. Some judges won't. Some judges are, again, biased towards the writing style.
It does have a thesis, right? It's opinionated, but it's got a thesis and it's got a pretty dang good conclusion, right? So it wraps us back.
And so don't let us bias you by how much focus we put on the writing style. We're doing this to help you out because some judges are going to be biased towards the writing style. And so we want you to be able to overcome that bias. But at the end of the day, it's all about the information, right? And so when we look at this, we're higher, right? Because that's some pretty good information and it covers a lot of stuff. You talk about breadth. I mean, it's talking about the NBA and NFL, and then it's talking about the situation in Europe, and then it's bringing it back to individual things within the United States. That's good stuff.
It's got names, dates, right? So if we played this out, right, inevitably what would have happened, and just because it does, right, one of these people would have been in a group with one of these people, right, and they would have to hash it out, right? And I know that American society is not about compromise today, but we are, right? And we want those three judges to get together and hash it out.
Right.
That's what we want.
Harkening back to what he said earlier, we don't want the loudest voice to be the main voice, right? A lot of times that can be really bad. So we're trying to avoid that because that's not how it should be. It should be different voices coming together for a consensus. This being the consensus here overall, I'm fine with that. Like that essay, even though I would have had it a little bit higher, probably a full point higher, maybe even a 5, like I'm okay with this because I completely understand. There's a lot of noise in that essay. Even though the information was great in my mind, the noise, the opinions, some of the problems with it, the syntax, that took away some points. And I understand why everybody ended up there. But again, it needs to be a consensus.
Right? So you with us on the process? Right? Because it influences how you write your essay. Right? It absolutely influences how you write your essay. Here's an essay that I got at State this past year.
And I can already hear some people grumbling about the writing. That is not bad compared to a lot of what we see. Like so if you're writing like that, don't get freaked out. Like that's great. That's fine. I can read that. Trust me, I get some other stuff that I need an interpreter and a Ci&E dog to get through.
This took me a while, right? What are some challenges at the southern border of the United States? One of the many challenges is the large amount of human trafficking, hundreds, right? See, it takes me a while, but I can eventually get there. I just wanted to show you that, right? So can you see why this would be more problematic if you're judging, even though that other essay was typed and we can go through it faster, right? I'm gonna have to spend more time on this one, but I don't know if it's better or worse, right? It's a different prompt, so it's not fair to compare.
But again, what you could do is just, if this is how you write, focus on spacing. You know, like that's gonna be something, you know, just that makes it easier on the eye. It's less work. And again, people are lazy. Don't force them to use that energy.
Yeah, I agree completely. In paragraphs, please, paragraphs. Right? When you change ideas, put a paragraph in, put a blank line.
But I will say, at least they spaced it out. Because if they hadn't spaced it out, this would have been an issue. You know, but spacing it out, that makes it a lot easier.
It was a problem. So with us on the writing, right? It matters. It absolutely matters. Right? Okay. So this is just the kind of comments that we're expecting back from judges. This is what you students have a right to expect in any meet that is a UIL sanctioned meet, right? Not the specifics necessarily, but you should get some constructive, maybe not at State because you know why, right? But at the other contests, I agree that this has a heavy editorializes, right from the get-go. Right? It tells you try to maintain an objective, sort of analytical tone. So not only do they tell you what the problem is, but they give you a solution. Like good judges should do that. Make sure that you organize the essay, include a thesis. Sometimes it's just regurgitation of stuff, right? So expect this. And if they don't give it to you, then go back to your instructor and say, hey, can I get somebody to give me some more
this
feedback?
is really good. Like the whole for example, I mean, you don't generally see that. So if you see that, like thank that judge because they gave you some good stuff. But at least you should be seeing like don't editorialize, you know, things like that. Yeah.
And I agree with Andy, especially in district, but even in region, you know, right? They might have pulled in an English teacher come judge your essay, and that person focused on grammar, spelling, punctuation stuff. That's fine, right? Take what you can get and learn from it, right? And they may be really, really busy people, so they only give you a few sentences, but you should expect a few sentences, right? We won't do this one. This was for our advisors this past summer. And again, comments. All right. So, winding down, closing thoughts.
All right.
This is the good stuff.
One thing that we always mention because it happens and it keeps happening is these points here. Okay. One, keep it simple because you only have so much time. You only have so much space. So focus on what you know and give us the best that you can. That's the whole keep it simple. That's why, you know, the 1, 2, 3, it works. Right? It's not something you should do for every writing assignment, but for here, it works. Okay. I harken it back to speech. If you have any background on speech, or if you have any classes that you've taken where they've taught you how to organize a basic persuasive or informative speech, you know, you got that intro, you got your 3 points, tell them where you're going with it, give them the information, and then sum it all up. It's great. It works. Keep it simple. If you know that structure going in, again, it's one less thing you're going to freak out about. How should I do this? What should my intro be like? Should I set the stage? Should I set the tone? You know, don't worry about that. No, going in, I'm going to do my intro. It's going to have 3 points. I'm going to break it down, and then I'm going to bring it back together with a conclusion. If you know that already, half of your essay's written before you even got there, right? It's kind of like half your speech is already ready before you even know what the topic is.
And you don't have to freak out about that. You can freak out about other stuff.
Exactly, because you're going to. So limit it, right? Help yourself out. Come to the game already prepared. Don't rant. We mentioned that. Don't go off on stuff. Nobody cares. I mean, you know, your opinion's going to show through anyway. Again, I'm sure you have a great opinion and all your YouTube subscribers are very happy to hear it, but most of the judges are not. So don't rant because the moment you do, they stop listening. Okay. Same thing with don't be silly. Some people think they're clever. Some people think they're clever. Not everybody thinks you're clever. Okay. And it might be hilarious, but not everyone's going to get your humor. And some people are just going to be like, yeah, that's funny, but it doesn't belong here. So save that for your 5 minutes at the open mic night and then focus on the information here. Because I've seen it before and I've had students who kept doing it because they're like, no, this time they're going to laugh. And they're not going to laugh. Okay. So don't even worry about it because the judges aren't here for that.
He's not kidding. I mean, satire, I used to have in the newsroom a satire sign. And when I would say one of those things, I would just walk over to my desk, grab the satire, because the students didn't get it. I thought it was funny. I thought it was the funny. I just hold up the satire sign. Whatever, right? So, again, just reorganizationally, open with a clear statement. I don't care about your opinion, right? But give me a little summary of what's going on. Get that outline out there. You've got your facts organized. Here's the first thing I'm going to do. Here's the second thing I'm going to do. However many you need to do. Use those transition words and flow in a logical order. Don't do squirrel, rabbit, squirrel. Don't do that.
And this one, we talked about it a little bit, but it's really important. Don't undersell this because, again, you're making them work. You don't want to make the judge work, whether it's the writing, whether it's the organization, whether it's the editorializing. You want to make it as smooth and as easy for them as possible so they come away with a positive interpretation of what you wrote, and they're just looking at those positive aspects. If it's not organized, they're not going to have that because you're making it work. They're like, wait, what are you talking about? Oh, I guess this goes back to their original point. You don't want them to have to do that. If there's arrows, then they're having to do that. So try to avoid those. Sometimes that has to happen. I get it. But the more you can just move forward logically, the better that your communication is.
And I'd rather them draw the arrows than me.
Right.
And then I don't, there's some stats about how many people actually make it to the end. Right? If your essay is good and they make it to the end, you want to leave them with something good. Right? And so like that essay that really was very mediocre, had a really strong ending. In fact, the strongest part of the essay was the ending. That's not good. But use that conclusion, right? Bring it full circle. Let them know, hey, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm going to prove it to you. If we had one thought that's been prevailing through all of this, is the essay matters. And certainly you can touch base with us. And I just want to say that as I push things along, we finish 5 minutes early, not 5 minutes late, like some.
I just can't get over you got me with chubby cheeks on that picture. Like, I don't know what's happening there. I feel like I'm impersonating a squirrel or something. But
We certainly got time for questions if anybody has any questions. Gripes, complaints? And now's the time.
questions,
I'd much rather you complain about something now. than-
queries, nothing,
Yep,
nothing,
we
tra la
got
la.
a question over here. I think we've been focused on the essay the entire time. I'm not sure the world has.
But I will tell you, and I mentioned this morning, even when I coached way back in the day, when I first started coaching, I didn't emphasize it as much. And then as I got more experienced, I realized how important it was for multiple reasons. And I started focusing on it a lot more. So I think there is just a natural thing when you look at these contests, it's all about the objective. And you kind of have to get to the essay eventually because you don't realize the importance when you start out. We do, so we're trying to make that process happen earlier.
It already is.
Yes, it's up there.
Good question.
And then we're going to post this recording as well, which
All
I'm
right,
about to
peace
show.
out. We'll see you in Austin in
Bye.
May. Good job.